in general, Q&A at the end.
Oh, sorry.
So I can do Q&A at the end as well.
Wonderful.
So, yep, but feel free to stop me whenever. But hello, everyone. Happy Rainy Wednesday. I'm really excited to talk to everyone. I'm really glad that this is a fun topic Jessica and I were talking about. Those kind of top tips when you're interviewing. You know, that's really important, especially now when a lot of interviews are virtual. And it's like, how can you prep? How can you feel more confident? So you're kind of knocking it out of the park. So that's kind of my goal today, is to give you those top tips. I've kind of broken it down to the prep beforehand, the actual interview itself, and then that post follow-up. So 3 different segments, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. But for those of you who are joining, I'm Brekiesha Weszely. I work with Brooksource, and I've known Jessica for a long time now, but I have worked a lot with Ivy Tech students. But I'm our program coordinator, so I kind of am a career coach, so to speak, and help those in the IT workforce in terms of training and acclimation to those different corporations that we work with here in Indianapolis. So that's kind of my focus. So I was super excited to talk to you guys today. So I will hop into this, and if you do have any questions, you can chat those to Jessica and she can stop me whenever, but we'll do Q&A at the end as well. So getting into the top tips for successful interviewing, the preparation is key, and I'm sure you guys have heard this a million times. Kind of going into the resume piece, when you're applying for the jobs, tailoring your resume is so important. And yes, it is time consuming, but I will say it is so important for you to truly read the job description and understand what are those top responsibilities and skills that this employer has set forth that they truly want us to know, and making sure that you're implementing those buzzwords into your resume. So that is really, really important. I know specifically in IT, those skills are something that we highlight at the top of our resume, and you want to make sure that those skills are then supported within your resume. So if you're going to put different programming languages, data analytics, they need to be supported somewhere else in your resume and not just in the skills section. You want it to be in a relevant coursework, in a project, in an internship, so that you are guiding that conversation in an interview of where you've used that skill and how confident you feel about it. So in the preparation part, always make sure that resume is reflecting that particular job you're interviewing for. LinkedIn research. So make sure that you are following that company before interviewing with them. I also encourage people, if you have an Instagram, to look and follow them. It kind of gives you a sense of their culture. Do they have Culture Fridays where they bring pizza in and do tech talks? Or do they, you know, do a Happy Wednesday where there's different topics that they share? I think that different sources, whether that's Glassdoor, Instagram, LinkedIn, are really good resources to use when you are, you know, preparing for your interview, and it's going to help you formulate a lot of those questions that you're going to want to ask in that interview. And then connecting with alumni. Every company that you're interviewing for, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be some type of alumni that works there. Connect with them beforehand, kind of see their path post Ivy Tech and how they've grown to their particular career. That's always good insight to bring into a conversation. So that in prep is really important. And my last piece on that is make sure you bring a notebook or a Padfolio with your questions written down, and you know, maybe your top 2 or 3 projects that you feel your strengths are most highlighted. And I'd have them written, folded out right in front of you. I always love seeing that someone's brought questions and notes to an interview, because it just really makes you come across as very prepared. So that's how I would always do that. During the interview itself, obviously professionalism is key. Dress to impress. If we're in person, that handshake, eye contact, your voice tone, and how confident you come across is extraordinarily important. If it is a virtual meeting, make sure that you are making sure you have a Zoom link ahead of time. Call in maybe a little bit earlier, just to make sure that your computer audio is on, that, you know, you've kind of got all the tech issues troubleshooted before that interview, because you never want to be late to something like that. So that's just kind of the logistics of the during. A big structure that I encourage in an interview of how you shape your questions is using the STAR method, STAR, and that stands for situation, task, action, result. So it's just a method in how you choose to answer a question in an interview. So if they ask, for instance, you know, if let's say it's a data coordinator role and they're like, can you please give us, your most relevant experience in your internship when it comes to data analytics? The situation, you're going to back up and say, the reasoning for getting the internship, the task part is, truly what is your role. That action is the day-to-day responsibilities that you do, and the result is kind of the conclusion of that internship and what you learned and your takeaways. So it frames it in a nice way when employers are asking you about a particular experience, that you kind of take a step back and explain, and then get all the way through that experience to the result. It frames it in a nice way because, other than reviewing your resume, that's all the information that they know. And we like to keep those resumes to one page. And with that being said, you may want to elaborate on more of an experience that you have that you didn't have, an extra line to put in. So that really gives you the chance to highlight those skills that you feel are your strongest assets to potentially their team. So that STAR method is something you can Google right away. That's how I would structure a lot of your projects and experiences, and even writing those down in your Padfolio of, let's say, an internship you had in that STAR method format is going to be extraordinarily helpful. Communication is key. I would say in an interview, it is so tricky sometimes to not be coming up with another question in the back of your mind or thinking of 6 other things other than what the interviewer is saying. So actively listening is key, making that eye contact, having that pleasant, demeanor where you're understanding what they're saying and being able to actively listen and ask questions. If you don't completely understand a question, make sure you go back and say, can you further explain this piece, or versa. You want to make sure that it's a conversation and not where you're not elaborating on those skills and those strengths that you do have. So I'd say just that communication is something, especially if we're new to the IT workforce, that a hiring manager is going to gauge. Your resume, they're going to maybe ask, talk me through a difficult time where you had to step up and make a decision for your team, or they're going to hint at something problem solving, because communication and problem solving are 2 key soft skills that hiring managers are looking for, because they know that you'll be able to be trained, work in a collaborative environment, and acclimate to their organization. So have some examples. I would have them written down and ready to go, because I would say every single interview you're going to be in, they're going to hint at something similar, and they want to think how you think on your feet. So they may put you in a behavioral type situation, and how would you handle yourself? You can backtrack and use that STAR method to really think through each phase, and it's going to allow them to get an insight into how you think through problem solving. And then a really good question I would ask in the interview phase is, what's your training and onboarding like? So what is the expectations in the first 3 to 6 months, but also, what resources are available to me? And what I mean by that is, will you have a mentor? Because if you're new to the IT industry, it's really great to have a mentor, maybe technically, that you can go to. Is there going to be a direct report that I will be working with daily? The team that I would potentially be on, do you meet weekly? Do you have daily stand-ups? What does that collaborative structure look like? And then those first 6 months, do you have any additional training outside of the job responsibilities that I can expect? Because being new to the IT industry, you really want to make sure that there is training, that there is mentorship, that there is a plan when you come in, because that's going to, 1, make your experience that much more enjoyable, but 2, is going to allow you to know that maybe, some of the technical skills that you have that you really want to work on can be supported while you're on site. So is there additional on-the-job training? Potentially, if it's a security related role, if I work towards my Security Plus certification, is that something that your organization would be willing to support? I think I always love when someone asks a networking question. Is your company really big on internal and external networking? Are you involved in the Indianapolis IT community? It's going to give you a good insight into the team other than just what the job details are. It's truly going to allow you to paint a bigger picture for you in that moment, and it's going to be able to allow you to formulate some more questions. So that's, I'd say, the during part that's really, really important. And I know I've repeated this, but I will say it one more time. Writing those questions down are huge because they're always going to say, is there any other questions you have? And if you're just trying to remember it in your mind and you've talked about 15 other things, it is so tricky to just come to and remember those questions. So I'd have anywhere from, I'd say 5 to 8 questions written down that you can quickly reference if they ask, is there any questions that you'd like to ask before we wrap things up? I just have them listed out. So that's kind of my piece of advice, the during. Obviously that follow-up is going to be crucial. So making sure you connect with your interviewer on LinkedIn is going to be a really nice professional follow-up. Sending a thank you, whether that's through that connection note or an email if you have it. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you, taking time out of your Wednesday to talk to me about X position. And if you can add something from that conversation that was like a personal touch or a conversation piece where you both laughed that you can mention in that thank you, that is just so impressive to me that you're able to, bring back a memory from that conversation that really stuck with you. And I would suggest that's like anywhere from 2 to 4 sentences, nothing crazy. Don't write them a novel, but an important thank you that doesn't seem so template format. A big thing too, when you are post-interview, if you're hopping back in your car, you just shut your laptop because it was a remote conversation, immediately write down your notes. What's your first impression? Like, you feel really excited, or are you more confused because you have 20 more questions? Immediately kind of take notes of how you're feeling about that conversation. Do you have more things that you need to research? If so, hop on your computer and get the answers that you need. And I'd always suggest, because I know a lot of us are actively interviewing right now, have some kind of scale that you use, maybe a 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 scale of how the interview went. And it's not necessarily just from your performance, but how was truly that conversation? Did the company excite you? Does their culture seem like something that you would really enjoy day to day? What type of work are they doing? Make sure you have some kind of template that you're using to break down each interview that you are in so that you can accurately compare and contrast which is going to be the best fit for you. Because in the moment it's like, oh, I think that was great, and then 2 days later you're like, I'm not sure all the questions that they asked me. So I think that immediate just sit down and take notes is very important for you to just make sure that you're on the right page and you've gotten all your questions answered. Especially too, if you're then asked to come in for a second round interview, you kind of know exactly that stopping point that you finished so that you can get right back into that conversation. I know I said connecting is key other than sending those thank yous out, but really doing additional research. If they mentioned a technology that they are going to start to implement, maybe they're moving to the cloud, that's something to write down and do a little research. So if a second interview comes, you're ready to go. So I would say other than that, on that post follow-up, I think that's just really, really important for you to kind of gauge. But I'd say that's kind of helpful for me in explaining that prep, and it's key and it's important that during asking and having a conversation and not just spitting back template or like automated answers and then that follow-up. That's truly when I'm interviewing individuals, that follow-up is key when they're having a conversation and listening to what I'm saying during the interview, and then that prep beforehand really shows in the interview. So that's kind of how I like to break it down to make sure that, it's a well-rounded experience for both parties. That's kind of what I had initially. I'm sure you guys have some questions when it comes to interviewing of the do's and don'ts. So I'd absolutely love to answer some questions for you guys. So if you want to, Jessica, what's the best way? Do you want them to send them to you, or do you want me to just open it up?
If people are comfortable with unmuting, they are more than welcome to, but you can also put it in the chat box and I will answer or ask for you. And until we get a question, we have, people are attentively listening to you, so attentive. I wanted to ask you, there's these classic interview questions, no matter what industry you get in, they're like behavioral, right? Mm-hmm. So as a tech person, as somebody that's analytical or more centered towards programming or back-end stuff, how would you answer some of those questions, especially like what's your greatest weakness or what's your greatest strength? What would be something that an IT person would would have a good answer to that question.
Absolutely. I think too, a lot of us, if we've had some IT experience, but not a ton. So you're probably someone who's had to step in when, someone missed work, or there was a time and you had a good idea and it maybe wasn't your job to share it, but you knew that there was an opportunity to share an idea. So I think from a technical perspective, someone who thinks analytically, a very easy way to show a strength or how you overcome a problem is, when I was an intern at Infosys and I was a data analytics intern, I really evaluated their process from data entry to data visualization and sat down and my 2 weeks on the side, I did a personal process of thinking how could they make that process a little bit better and presented it to my manager. Not that that manager was going to immediately implement it, but it's something that you've thought about. And instead of just showing up to work, doing your 8 hours, how would you have improved that process? I think that's really big when a manager wants to know, well, what would you do if you were in my shoes? So I think analytically, us in IT, I think that's a really easy way to show how you would improve a process as a strength or a time where you maybe stepped up to the plate because someone on your team did not. And I think that's a really easy way for you to use a lot of different things. You stepping up and helping a professor in the class, or you reached out and mentored someone younger than you because you knew that they weren't getting that programming language as quickly as you did. And so you took the initiative. Any way that you can show that you stepped out of your comfort zone, you went beyond the job description is an easy way for a manager to go, okay, he's going to take initiative, or she, is a problem solver and can think quickly on their feet. I think with the weakness question, always a fun one. I think the biggest thing on that is showing you're open-minded and willingness to grow and learn. So if they ask you, for instance, one of the requirements for this job is advanced Excel. Like, how do you feel about your Excel ability? You can be honest. Don't say, yeah, I'm a master when you're not. You can say, right now, I would say that I'm an intermediate level, but I would say that one of my biggest strengths is my problem solving and being able to learn quickly. So I would, if I'm at an intermediate level, I will put the time and effort needed in to become more advanced. I think quick on my feet. If you give me a task, I can ask the right questions, not too many, but will quickly acclimate to your environment. And I pride myself on the strength of being able to learn quickly on the job. So you kind of counter a weakness with the strength of being able to learn. Obviously, being new to IT, they can't expect that you have 6 years of IT experience when maybe we just graduated in May or December. So the expectation is, can I throw you into a situation where you can ask the right questions and hit the ground running? And I think being open to your strength of those soft skills is really going to offset maybe a technical weakness that they bring up. Always having that kind of learning curve into your conversation is a really good way, not to dodge a weakness, but to highlight a strength.
That's great information. You did speak on, when we're looking for entry-level positions, we don't have a lot of experience, if any. So for somebody that has zero professional experience in IT, what are some ways that they can talk about their affinity for IT when answering these interview questions?
I love that. I think the why, like why IT. I love when someone's like, when I was 14, I love taking apart a computer and putting it back together. That story sticks with me. So I think understanding your why did I choose IT is really going to resonate with a hiring manager because they also chose IT at some point in time. So it's really showing who you are. So that why is huge. I know you're probably told a lot about tailoring your resume. If you've had no internship experience, but you love IT, but you've had coursework, highlight those courses that really were your favorite and why were they your favorite? Have examples. I would say if there's maybe software development and it was in your spring semester of your second year, highlight that and explain what you did in that course that really made you think, if this was a full-time job, I would absolutely love it. I know some people just list all their courses down, like all 8 that were relevant to IT. But if there's 2 or 3 in there that are really important to you, I would make it appear on your resume more like a project. And, when they ask, why did you kind of go into detail of this software development course, you can explain why. I really loved Python. When I worked with it, it connected with me. That's kind of why maybe I applied to this data analytics position, because Python is a technology that is consistently used in data analytics. And I wanted to highlight it here because it just came so naturally to me. So I think explaining the why, you can just dive in purely to your coursework and explain to them the reasoning behind you liking certain courses and certain areas. Also, reaching out, those side projects are huge. It kind of explains your passion. Why did you choose to do, a project management, mentorship on the side, or you're pursuing a certification that's maybe a little different than your degree? Why is that? Anything that can explain who you are is going to be key. Even if that's you not having an internship, that's not a make or break. It's just being able to articulate what direction you are wanting to go with your career is most important to me when I'm interviewing individuals.
That's fantastic. We still don't have any questions written in the chat box, but if anybody would like to ask a question, please do, because I don't want to take up all of this fantastic space. This is for you. So, Brekeisha is full of knowledge on all this stuff. And and if no one asks this question, I'm going to dig into the Elevate program just very briefly. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds.
I can, yeah. So if you want, does anyone have any questions? Because if not, I have a next note.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, just obviously given the circumstance of everyone being remote right now, remote networking is so important. And the reason I say that is everyone is sitting at their desk, at their dining room table, on their computer, and they probably have LinkedIn pulled up. So your LinkedIn profile is so important right now, especially if you're applying to a job. That's immediately that someone's going to go and see your profile and see if it's up to, is it relevant to your coursework? That coursework I talked about, is that on your profile as well? That's something that's going to be really important for you to keep updated. Connecting to alumni is so important. I would say probably 9.5 times out of 10, if you send a connection to alumni, they are going to accept that. I would, make it a task to follow 5 new companies a week in the Indianapolis area, if that's where you're looking for an IT related opportunity, and do some research. I'd kind of set a structure for your week. I'm going to follow 5 new companies and I'm going to connect to 10 new alumni from those companies each week. You get, I believe, 300 characters in a connection that you send on LinkedIn. Really important that you don't say, hey, I need a job, please help me now. You want to say, hey, I noticed that you also went to Ivy Tech and have a software development associate. I would love to hear about your career path and how you got to where you are. Everyone loves to talk about their career path and help and mentor those who are pursuing something similar. So I really encourage you to reach out to those people, say, hey, do you have 10 minutes for a quick phone conversation or a Zoom call? We could do a virtual coffee, something for them to allow to get to know you better and not just evaluate your resume and think that they know everything about you. So I'd say that is really important in these times, because there may not be as many opportunities right now. Who's to say in 3 to 4 weeks that there's not a lot more openings here in Indianapolis. So you want to be making sure that you're expanding your network, so when that time comes, you have the right people in your network to kind of advocate for you for a position that you applied to.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. Now more so than ever, LinkedIn is increasingly going to be your go-to tool. I think anymore, it's more important than the resume. The resume is kind of like the calling card to
Yes.
direct the reader to your LinkedIn account. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Robert, you're mute.
Thank you, Jessica.
Hi.
Thank you. How do you say your name? Brekeisha?
Brekeisha, yes.
Brekeisha. Just we didn't want to butcher it or anything like that.
You're good.
I wanted to talk about cover letters. I know that cover letters, a lot of positions or a lot of applications, they look like they're optional. But then, it seems to me that it's still very important to use them. So what is your take on cover letters, and what would be the best way to catch the attention of my skills to a potential employer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, yes, they are important and they are a little bit time consuming, but they are worth it. I would say your cover letter does not need to be a replica of your resume. A lot of people just take their tech stack and just move it to their cover letter as their strengths. And I could have gotten that from your resume. So what can I learn about you in your cover letter that I can't get from your resume? And that's kind of those talking points that when you get to an interview where I learn about why did you like IT? Why did you pursue that career path? That's a great tidbit to tie into your cover letter. And then also, can you connect that to that company's mission statement or their core values? One of our core values at Brooksource is family. Can you tie that back into, you know, that kind of core value that Ivy Tech has, and that's why you were a TA for a class? Something along those lines, and just instead of, a lot of times cover letters that I read seem very template and that they've just deleted the, you know, the company's name and added a new one in. And that comes across when it's not as personal. So I would just say, take your time. Concise is better. You know, I would say like 3 small paragraphs of 3 sentences or 2 paragraphs of 4. Good amount of wording in a cover letter, but I'd say that's key.
Right. What is the timing of the cover letter? Should I send it with the application along with the resume, or should I send it at the moment that I have an interview? What's the timing of the cover letter?
It should be before the interview, because if they're going to bring you in for an interview, you're going to be able to highlight a lot of probably what is on your cover letter. I would just say if it gives the option to apply with a cover letter and a resume, I would do that. And that's the time that I would send it. I think it's always good if you're sending it to someone directly, like in an email, that you attach a cover letter and resume, but just make sure it's tailored to that particular job opportunity. Sometimes if I don't have a particular role in mind, someone will send me a cover letter, which is great, but it's then not tailored to really anything. So I would say only send it if it's tailored to a particular opportunity. Welcome. Great question.
All right. And we have another question as well from Mohammed. As you said, communication is first and most important key point. What is your advice for those who are not native English speakers? I mean, how can one with English as a second language follow up with interviewers? Something, you know, sometimes interviewers speak too fast. So what are some ways that our ESL friends can communicate better?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think too, in those questions when you prep in the beginning, make sure you have a few questions at the end that says, hey, you know, going back to that particular experience that you mentioned, can you elaborate more on what you meant, or can you go into a little bit more detail surrounding that particular question? An interviewer is never going to hate to repeat a question. So I'd say in the moment of an interview, make sure that you're getting all the relevant information that you need. Following up, if you're like, you know, it hits you 10 minutes later after leaving that interview, I wasn't sure what they meant by that, you know, behavioral related question. One, I would do your research first to make sure you kind of are asking the best question you can. But if you have an email address to someone who did interview you or HR, I think always in a thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you speaking to me about this data analytics opportunity. For further clarification, I did want to ask 2 related questions so that I fully understand this position better. Could you dive into detail on this and this? This would help me better understand the role so that I have a bigger picture idea of this data analytics position with you. So I think it's always okay to follow up with that, but I would say in the interviews when I strongly encourage you to ask those questions, because then it's live time and you can then use body language and, you know, someone's speech of like, you know, if they get really excited, their voice is going to go higher. You can kind of use those, I guess, touches to really understand if they were a serious tone or if they were excited, for you to kind of be able to read their just body language easier. I think that is always helpful.
And then also, I just wanted to add to that too, there's no shame in asking somebody to repeat themselves, especially if you're not picking it up. I mean, I do that, and I'm a native English speaker and I talk super fast, so I completely understand when someone's like, excuse me, what? So
Yes.
we're all human. We all have our little quirks and flaws, and it's okay to be like, hey, yo, take a moment. Can you explain that again or reword it for me so I can understand it? And, you know, it's cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a fast talker, and every day I'm like, let me backtrack, because I can read that when I said it, the individual sitting across from me was like, Brekeisha, you talked way too fast. And I said, let me take a step back, or can you say that again? You cut out, whatever it is. Like, yeah, there is absolutely no shame in asking to repeat a question in whoever it is, especially if you need a few more seconds to understand your answer. It's okay for you to ask them to elaborate. That's a good word to use. Can you elaborate or go into more detail about your question so that I can have a better answer? That's a good way to say that. Great question. Any other questions?
That was a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to leave right now?
No, I'm good.
All right. We don't have any questions currently, but I did want to touch on the Elevate program within Brooksource. I don't know if any of our students currently know what the Elevate program is, but I think it's a great program, and I would love for you to speak briefly on it.
Yes, I would love to do that. Yes, so at Brooksource, we're headquartered here in Indianapolis. We have two different programs. One is Elevate, and that is for individuals with 0 to 3 years of technical experience. And we also have Project Patriot, which is similar in years of experience, but that is if you have a veteran background. Both programs are what I oversee, but the goal in the front end is me getting to know you as an individual, your technical strengths, your career goals long-term, and we help pair you on-site with one of the 12 different companies that we work with here in Indianapolis. Once we help pair you with that, we provide on-the-job technical training and professional development throughout those first 6 to 12 months while you are on the job working, being paid a full 40-hour work week. So it's very customized to you, which is exceptional when you're new to the IT workforce. But also, let's say if you come in at a data coordinator and at the 6-month mark, IU Health, for instance, a great client that we work with, they'd like you to be to that data analytics level. We will provide that training at no cost to you to help you train and acclimate to get to that maybe mid-level at that 6 to 12 month mark. So what I do in that program, you are an employee of Brooksource, meaning that we can provide you that additional training, but I'm an additional layer of support to you, but I check in pretty regularly to make sure you don't have any first job related questions, that you have resources that you need, but I'm pretty hands-on to help coach you through that process. And then at the end, the goal is you're converted to a full-time employee of that company. And we work with 12 different organizations in Indianapolis. Those bigger IT environments are typically what we target, but that training is our bread and butter and what we're most proud of, but it helps you really hit the ground running if you're brand new to IT. And I think too, Jessica has my information too.
Right.
So if you have additional questions, I'd love to set up a conversation with you, but it's something we're really proud of at Brooksource.
Right, and that definitely, I'm sure sparked some interest in our students. I always see ears perk up like, what? Usually what we do is you can either, Chinda, you asked how can one be a part of the Elevate program. I can connect you, introduce you via email to Brekeisha, and then you guys can set up, I guess, a virtual coffee chat, right, to kind of figure out where you might be a good fit. And if you do have a resume, that's nice to attach as well. So Brekeisha has something to, start the conversation off with. And she's pretty good about setting this up like right away. So if you're interested in connecting with Brekeisha about the Elevate program or the Project Patriot program, you can either email me and I will connect you via email or LinkedIn.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah, and definitely use me as a resource. In addition to, I know Jessica gives you guys a ton of great information, but there are so many individuals right now that I mentioned that are at their computers more than ever. So take advantage of these resources having a little bit more downtime than normal, especially those experts in the industry. But I would say too, a big thing I've been telling people is there's a lot of free training online right now that has never happened before. Through Pluralsight is something, if you're familiar with, Udemy, even if you search free IT training, there's a lot of certifications that you can prep for where you're not even paying for that training right now, as companies just are kind of doing that in lieu of COVID-19. So that's something to kind of maybe help offset your downtime. And if that's something you can bring up in an interview is, on my downtime, I've been pursuing X certification. That is never a bad thing. That is something to always think about as well.
Right. So Casey is asking something that is pretty typical among our diverse student population. There are those of us who are already employed full-time while taking courses at Ivy Tech, but are looking into pivoting into IT. So what you're describing as the Elevate program, is it more of an internship, or are these full-time positions being offered?
Great question. It is a full-time opportunity. Yep. So it'll be a full-time 40-hour work week with the long-term goal that you're converted to a full-time employee of that company, but you will work a 40-hour work week with Brooksource. It's just, we kind of frame it as a contract to hire model, so that during that contract period, we're able to provide you that technical training and professional development before then you switch to more of like a salaried employee at that company.
So does Brooksource then, as a full-time employee of Brooksource, you do receive typical benefits and all that
Yes,
stuff as well?
yeah, benefits, health, dental, and vision. And then depending on how long that contract is, there's additional, you know, if once you hit your year mark, there's perks that come as well. We do also have paid holidays. So very similar to what we have as a Brooksource employee. But yeah, that's something too that'll be great for further conversation as well. And I can send those to anyone who is actively looking.
So that's great.
Brekeisha, what are the minimal requirements for the program?
That you're just not a lot, passion for IT, which I feel like everyone on this call has. But I think the kind of next steps, like Jessica said, get connected with me so I can kind of talk through your timeline. I'd say the biggest thing for me is, like, if you're looking, let's say if you're graduating in 2021, we can absolutely have an initial conversation, but I won't know what companies are doing a year out. I would say in that 4 to 6 week period is really the sweet spot in terms of, hey, in 6 weeks, I'm going to need a full-time opportunity. That's when we kind of hop on the phone, talk through what you're looking for. And really what I'll just need to know is like those top technical strengths, the type of companies you're looking for, your timeline in general, and then we'll kind of talk through compensation goals and career goals long-term. And that just will help me kind of tee you up for a better fit opportunity.
So then are you looking for graduates from like with an associate's degree, or would you take somebody that has a certification?
So yeah, certifications work as well. So it really is dependent upon the end client. So when I say client, I mean companies in Indianapolis. So the SEAL program at the state of Indiana, they were just looking to give those certifications and potential Ivy Tech credits through the SEAL program at the state of Indiana. So for instance, that was not a degree qualification.
Right.
A lot of times the biggest things we're looking for is attitude and aptitude, you know, and you being a good culture fit for that company that you're working for. So certifications are definitely a great thing to have, and associates, but it really is not a requirement, but each company varies. But I will always let you know going into each conversation or opportunity what those qualifications are, so you're set up for the most success.
That's great. Well, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. Again, I could sit here and ask questions all day at Brekeisha. I think me and her could definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So does anybody have any further questions? And it doesn't have to be about interviewing. It could be about anything IT job related, entry level. Like, what are the top 3 skills that you're seeing right now from your clients, Brekeisha? That's my next question. I said I wasn't going to ask, but you know, like coding languages, or, you know, Agile, Scrum, project management. What are like some of the things that you're seeing repeatedly from your clients?
Absolutely. I think Agile is huge, just familiarity with it and knowing a lot of companies are moving that way. I would say just being cognizant of the fact that, yes, we are going through COVID-19 right now. So most companies are now having everyone work from home. So when they get back in the office, things aren't going to be the same. So having that Agile mindset is going to be huge, given that a lot of companies are going to acclimate to more of a collaborative, not laid back, but the environment's going to be a lot different. So being ready for that is huge. I think also just saying and or putting on your resume that you're confident in your ability to work remotely is something I've never told students before, but that is something, if you have a career objective at the top of your resume, I'd add it into your profile on LinkedIn, is putting, you know, ability to work independently and remotely, because a lot of companies are onboarding individuals remotely where you're not even going into the office, everything's virtual for the time being. And if you're putting that you have confidence in that, that's really great check in your box. In terms of programming languages, Java and .NET are two that are really popular in Indianapolis, but I've asked a ton of hiring managers, what do you feel is most important? They said it's not particularly what language, it's the amount of them. And they're like, once an individual knows one programming language, it's easier to learn the next. So having more than one is truly what they're asking of you, because that's showing that your skill set's a little bit more diverse, which is what they'd want anyways, because a lot of companies are moving to the cloud, and that's going to have you have to shift your skill set anyways. So really the number of programming languages is more their ask. And then data analytics is important, whether that's you going data science or maybe data visualization, but anything in data is really popular right now, especially in the healthcare environment. We've seen a lot more opportunities in healthcare in data specifically, as you can imagine, with everything going on right now. There's a lot more data that needs to be manipulated, analyzed at a quicker rate. So I'd say those are a few that I'm just seeing right now. And then if you truly love to be that liaison between business and IT, those individuals are always needed, whether that's a business analyst or program coordinator. Obviously certifications coming into play with that are very important, like pursue PMP or something along those lines that shows that you love management, but those individuals are always needed to bridge the gap between business and IT. So always keep that in mind.
Fantastic. Mohammed has another question. He's not a big fan of programming, so it sounds like he is kind of exploring where his place is in IT. Mm-hmm. So what fields within IT can somebody get into? You briefly touched on some, but a fuller scope that you've seen that's not programming.
Sure. Yeah, that programming is great, but totally not for everyone. I completely agree with you. Data analytics, I'd mentioned, software development, security is really big right now, whether that's like a security analyst, or if you want to go more the cybersecurity route, analytics in general, like that hybrid role that I'd mentioned between business and IT, there's a lot of variations. Business systems analyst, business analyst, project coordinator, project manager, what I've heard of the combination of project analysts, all one and the same in terms of hybrid roles, but programming is not the end all be all by any means. If you're passionate about it, absolutely pursue it. But I've had people who have their associates in software development and they're like, I don't want to code, and that's okay. I think that everything moving to the cloud, there's a lot more no code related computer softwares that you can acclimate to and learn and become like an expert in Salesforce, for instance. That's really popular right now. So there's a lot of avenues. I would just say, when you go back and think of your coursework, I would really say, what are the 4 courses that I took that I really loved, and thinking back to the why did I love them, that is really going to help you understand the direction you want to go in terms of an IT path. And that's something I can have a conversation with you about if we need to dissect that together.
Wonderful.
I want to piggyback. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I want to piggyback that last question too, because say for example, myself, I've been in sales for 15 years. I love to build relationships with clients. My interaction with people is what it drives me, but I also love the technology side of things. I'm currently doing a certificate in informatics, Salesforce administrator stuff, and all of that I have under my belt. Mm-hmm. And then what is that? It looks like that coordinator position is the one that is important. What would be the perfect role for someone that is client based, building relationships, along with having that technical skill? Is that liaison person that you're talking about?
No, that's a good question. I'd say right off the top of my head, that kind of reads to me IT consultant. And it really, I guess, depends on like if you're wanting internal, you like that internal relationship, or external, because there's vendor management, which is external. So you're not only representing the company you work for, but also, interacting with other organizations to identify which tools is going to be best for the company to use. And that's all people relation, IT, conversation, sales. So consulting, vendor management, IT vendor management, project coordinator, business analyst, those are going to be more internal. that you're doing obviously all those great relationship buildings, but that's going to be within the organization. So I'd say I just encourage you to know if you're like that outside kind of sales mentality or internal. Also like the HR recruiting IT path, you know, you really set yourself apart if you can talk the talk in IT and find those individuals for organizations. So that also may be a route to consider.
And this is very similar to Robert's question. What would you advise students do to enhance the skills that you were talking about, like the skills that employers are looking for? And what are some roles for someone who is more social in IT?
Love it. One that the cover letter that Robert had mentioned is really important to put that in. If you have the opportunity to say that you love relationship building, but you are analytical because you have that IT foundation, that's a great highlight to put on your career objective and your resume itself. But those kind of related positions, I would say an easy thing is on LinkedIn, you can filter when you're looking for jobs. If you're putting project coordinator, you can filter to industry. So I would just filter to the IT industry, and maybe you put entry level. You can also, I mean, it sounds silly, but Google, you know, IT coordinator roles in Indianapolis, see what comes up. I would start to have a list of project coordinator, you know, business analyst, management, IT consulting. If you like people, you need to use those management, coordination, oversee, those kind of buzzwords to look at jobs. I wouldn't judge a job opportunity by its title because there's 6 different ways to say software developer. So just note that going into your job search, you really need to look through job descriptions, those top 4 to 5 responsibilities. Like, what are those, and do those really click with you? And I'd say if so, yes, save that and start looking for jobs that fall under that title. So it does take a little bit, but I would say the job description itself is what you really need to read into. I would say a lot of times I have people who apply to jobs and it may say 6 years of experience. Someone's graduating in May. That means they didn't read the job description because the requirement said, you know, at least 6 years of experience. So I'd say that's something new for those entry-level IT individuals. Read that job description because it's not necessarily a red flag, but I can tell those who have read through it and those who just applied to 20 jobs on LinkedIn without reading the job description. So I'd say take your time and dissect it, and I promise it'll be a lot easier that way.
Sorry, I don't want to monopolize the questions, but I have another one.
Of course.
So see, that's the situation, because then, you know, when you are very freshly new into the IT field, and a lot of the job postings says, you know, a minimum of 3 years, a minimum of 5 years. Is this experience also could be equivalent to years in the field in building relationships? I know when it's IT and it's with programming, I mean, that is a very specific thing. But is there any equivalent that we can fight for?
The soft skills, the management, the social interaction, the relationship building, absolutely. If you are currently have a full-time job and you are going and getting your associates, 100%, like definitely fight for those. I would say just when it's specifically technical and it says, you know, you need 5 years of Java development experience, like they're really probably going to stick to that when it's technically speaking. If you're a year off in that, I'd strongly encourage you, you know, year to year and a half off, still go for it and see, but I would just say know what you're getting into and have those questions or answers ready to go. If they were to ask you, you know, you only have a year of experience, but this asks for 4, you know, how would you counter that? So I still strongly encourage you to apply to those jobs, but when it comes to the technical piece, just I'd say be a little bit more cognizant of it. I know I saw in the chat someone had mentioned Pathfinder. Is that correct?
Well, I'm sorry, you broke up. What did you say?
So did someone mention Pathfinder in the?
Yeah. Muhammad got selected for an interview, and I know that several of our students are preparing for that. And I was just offering that I actually have some tips because
Yes.
I know what questions they ask. So maybe I need to put in together an impromptu webinar for all you folks so you can kind of get prepared for that as well.
That's incredible.
But if you have anything to add, you know, they're going to be interviewing for either the administrator or the developer path. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would stick to Jessica's point of if she has some great questions to prepare for, 100% hit her up. I do have a Salesforce specific webinar that just happened. I will send it to Jessica as soon as this happens. Someone who's in that space, and he talks about the different career paths. And that's a part of our virtual series. So I will send that link to Jessica. We just did our first week of that for Brooksource. So it's kind of us extending that support since we don't have as many engagements on campus, that we have an education series of subject matter experts in the industry. So 2 days ago,
awesome.
But I will send the link so you guys can sign up for those. They're about an hour long and they are around the lunch hour. So yes.
Wonderful. All right. So we have about, you know, a couple more minutes. If anybody has any final questions, feel free to ask, but if not, we'll get this information sent out to you. Just make sure that you're messaging me your email address so I make sure that I'm getting the right people, okay? Because I can't really tell by some of your chat names who's who, okay?
Yeah, and I'd say, guys, great job. Like, thank you for coming. This sets you apart from other individuals because you took the time out of your day to hop onto this. I think that is what makes you stand apart, that you're already making the effort to increase your skill set and knowledge so that it does not go unnoticed. So please continue to do these types of things. It's really going to help you gain a lot of insight, and it was a whole 51 minutes out of your day. So I think just continue to do that. But thank you so very much. I'm excited to connect with a lot of you, but keep asking Jessica and me questions, but really encourage you to increase your network over these next few weeks, because that's going to be great to just have that support system going into your job search.
Yeah, this is Penny. Sorry, I couldn't find the little hands up thing, but I did have a question.
I saw your mute go on and off. I was like, oh, Penny's got a question.
I got a question. I couldn't find the little hands up, and I'm like, okay.
Yes.
I am actually part of the list system program with IUPUI, even though I go to Ivy Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we had done like a little, I call it the Lego seminar for Agile Scrum. And that's actually something that I'm wanting to look into doing, because the previous company I was with, I was actually supposed to go to Paris for a month and go through some extensive Agile Scrum training,
Mm-hmm.
And be one of their masters of it for the corporation. Do you guys offer anything there that is more prep based for the testing and stuff for skills sets, or not?
Yeah, so we absolutely, I would say, I just want to clarify that our program takes place once we help you find an opportunity on site with a company in Indianapolis. So yes, to answer your question, we would find those resources you would need to maybe get a certification and help pay for an Agile or Scrum certification, but that does always coincide with a full 40-hour work week at a company site. The program is not its own entity and then you get a job. It works in conjunction with. But if that was something that we did help you find an opportunity, absolutely, that'd be something that we could help you with.
Would that be something that would still work? Like, I've currently still have classes at least through the end of this year, possibly into 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing database management administration, but I'm learning through the process because our classes are so escalated now that I'm not picking up as fast as I want to, like SQL and different things like that. But I like
Mm-hmm.
to sell. I have an interview with Salesforce also, so that's one thing I need to get with Jessica on for that. The interviews, because I'm 2 years not interviewing, and I was in sales way back when, so I didn't really interview. My stats kind of spoke for themselves, but I still want to be able to start learning the other stuff. But I'm trying to intermingle, like summertime. I've only got 2 classes, so I have plenty of time to start a job full time. It's just I can't find one because I'm kind of like some other individuals. Most of my background isn't fitting into the jobs that I'm trying to get into now. Even into internships, I can't even get my foot in the door for an interview yet. And I've been trying for a while.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your transparency. I do think that being open to, like you'd said, that internship and contract opportunities are going to be really key right now. I would say what my biggest, and I know this sounds redundant, but that networking piece is going to be huge for people to understand your story If they understand like, hey, she only has 2 classes a week, she can devote 40 hours. Contract that maybe is only a month information for you. I'd encourage that. I think it really depends upon compensation. And I tell this to everyone, if you are open to shadowing and, or, you know, for a week, if you're able to sit in with individuals and kind of shadow them in the industry, sometimes that is just as helpful if you can't find something full-time right now. I would say in general is really tricky. Right now, given COVID-19, a lot of companies are in freezes or they're necessary. So do know that, but also people have more downtime than ever. So if you have someone, if you're like, they have the job I want when I graduate, I would encourage you to network with those individuals and say, hey, do you have 2 hours every week for me to literally sit in on a call or shadow you? You can share your screen and let me just see you run through like a dashboard so that I'm getting the actual hands-on experience. I mean, a lot of times that's going to go further than you realize. So I wouldn't be discouraged for the fact that companies aren't hiring right now, but networking will help you still get that hands-on experience. And that's absolutely something you can still put on your resume.
Okay. Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to do is get stuff on my resume because I've worked, because I'm 50 years old. So I've worked a lot, but we kind of dummied my resume down so it doesn't look like I've worked I've got my skill sets and stuff on there, but just like your skills, I have different things. Like I can do some SQL and stuff. I have it on there, but it's not in my experience. So I have it listed as a skill set, but I can't really put it down in my experiences because the only experience I've had is really school. And then I can't get my foot in the door. And I did have quite a few internships lined up prior to the virus deal. So those all fell back because they're like, well, we're not doing anything. So I mean, I still have those names wrote down for future, but I'm almost getting ready to graduate and it's kind of getting a little, scary. So
yeah, I would say with your resume, if you want data analytics, your resume should read data analytics. There should be no question when I look at it, this individual wants data. So I think it is true. You've had a previous career path and you want to highlight everything that you've done. I know that is so hard to not list everything, but just a rule of thumb I've been giving individuals who pivot into IT where they've had a job prior is really making that job concise, highlight those strengths that are very transferable, that's management, sales, collaboration, etc. But keep those concise so that you can then build out that course that you use SQL with as your support when you put SQL in your skills section. So that supports, yes, it was in school and that's completely fine, but you want to highlight where it was so that if I'm interviewing you, I'm like, so I see you mentioned SQL and then you mentioned that this is the course, talk me through it. And then you can exactly say how much you know about SQL because you've listed it twice on your resume. So that promotes the right kind of conversation. I think a big thing for everyone to know is make sure your resume reads exactly the career path you're wanting to go. If that's your career objective and you're literally saying it, awesome. I love literal people. But you want to make sure that it's not confusing where you could maybe go 6 different routes with your resume and you've just sent it to someone and they have so many questions. So make sure that your career path or those couple job titles that you're looking for are truly supported and clear in your resume, even if that is only from your coursework, that is completely fine.
And I think that's part of my problem because I've been trying to get out in the force while I'm doing the different courses to really, I guess, figure out because my resume would probably read that way because that's kind of mentally where I'm at. It's like, I love working with data, but I come from a compliance world and a sales background. So a lot of the stuff I'm doing now, my coursework is what I need to be able to get out in the job field, but it's really not the niche. Like I don't want to spend my whole day doing SQL. I have no desire to do that whatsoever. But in order for me to get into where I can do the scrubbing and doing some of the data, I have to have that SQL experience. And so that's kind of where I'm like, okay, SQL is not my thing like it is some people. I don't have that. I don't have that mentality of IT like a lot of IT people do. But I like working with numbers and doing different stuff. And I like quality and the Salesforce. The reason I did that was a mentor I have in my other, because I do have the sales background. And he says my sales background would actually fit really well in one of the programs for the admin for the Salesforce. So that's kind of like, oh, okay. So I'm going to take that avenue because I was usually top producer for 20 years in sales. So I know sales.
Right.
So, but I don't
Yeah.
want to be the person that goes out and sells computers. I mean, I don't want to
Sure.
sell IT. I don't want to sell that like the other gentleman I hear like that. It sounds like that might be his really awesome niche for him. It's not for me.
Yeah, and that's okay. I think the biggest thing with that is like, I got all of that information from a quick conversation, and that is truly what's going to set you apart. I'd say your profile, you can be a little bit more lengthy on your LinkedIn profile section of expressing where your passions truly lie. That doesn't mean that you can't put SQL in it, but if you articulate that you love the collaboration, you come from a sales background, but you're not interested in selling computers like you said, you can articulate that in your profile section. But I'd say, your mentor that you do have, I'd ask that mentor, do you have 3 other people that you could connect me with that I could kind of talk to them and learn more about their path? So I'd say the more connections you can get, the more people will know your story and understand, oh, wow, she's a great fit for this because she can talk to business, she can talk to IT, and she's kind of this perfect liaison for us, but it's just going to come from conversations then more so than your resume.
Thank you for your help.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for you. I can tell that you're a great communicator. So I know there's something out there for you, but I would just say networking is the name of the game right now.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. And I'll reach out with Jessica too on some things to get more direct in touch with you also.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah, and same for all of you, even you quiet folks out there. I know you're listening and probably taking notes, so feel free to reach out to me. If you don't know my email address, it's jjagger@ivytech.edu, and I will connect you with Brekeisha with this recording, as well as some additional information on that, the Pathfinder folks. If you need to set up something, I will try to set up an impromptu webinar probably later this week to help you guys out with those interview questions. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much for your time today.
Yeah,
of course.
Great.
Look forward to connecting with you all.
Thank you.
Best of luck. Absolutely. Look forward to chatting.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.